Today, to finish our discussion of Eastern philosophy, we will cover Zen philosophy. So if someone were to say to you, "You are out of your mind," what are they actually saying? What does that mean? Instead of getting bogged down with all of the words we have in our heads, all of the thoughts and the symbols that are in our mind, that they have very little to do with what is actually happening. When we're stuck in our mind, we are playing around with these thoughts and symbols. We're not in the real world. Zen philosophy tries to bring your attention out of your mind, out of your constant thought patterns, and back into the present moment. If you remember from Buddhism, the idea of emptiness, meaning emptiness of all of the thoughts, so you can actually respond to the world instead of just react to it. So Zen philosophy has a number of different parts to it, and they build on stuff we've already talked about. So we will go through them one at a time over the next couple of days. And we will start off with words, which does not seem like a big deal, but the idea of words actually limit us in the view of Zen philosophy. So here's one of the few pictures I've ever actually taken. I took it one morning, and I titled it, "Seeing the Forest Through the Trees." Now, a lot of people they see this picture and they see the gas price. I see the picture and I see the amazing sunset that's being obscured by all of the modern electricity. But the idea of seeing the forest through the trees, a lot of times we miss the big picture because we're focusing on the little things in front of us, the words and the thoughts. The words and the thoughts are not reality. They are as close to reality as a picture of a cake is to a cake. In other words, Bruce Lee says, and I showed this video early, don't think, feel. It's like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all. Now, I showed you this earlier in the unit, Bruce Lee. It's like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you miss all the heavenly glory. The moon is the world. It is life. It is what's going on. But we tend to not pay attention to the 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week brand new movie that's playing in the world. And instead we focus too much on the finger, which is all of our thoughts. Words are an example. I can say the word orange to you. Did you have an orange? And if you've never actually had an orange, that doesn't really mean anything to you. The only way you'll really understand an orange is by tasting it, but we tend to get preoccupied on labeling of things. This is Ludwig Wittgenstein. He is not a Zen philosopher, but rather he's one of the more well-known philosophers of the 20th century. He studied linguistics, and he basically broke it down. Language is what we use to paint a picture in the minds of others. In other words, I'm talking to someone else, and I tell a story, and I'm saying, oh my God, and this happened and that happened. And I'm hoping that my words generate a picture in the mind of the person I'm talking to. But in actuality, the words that I'm using might not paint the correct picture. A lot of times when we're listening to what's going on in the world or someone telling us a story, we have our own baggage, meaning we have our own mind full of opinions and thoughts. And as a result, a lot of times the idea of like a pink tinted glasses, I used the example in the past, like, you know, a real jerk boyfriend, and everybody else can see it except for the girlfriend. Oh, he's so sweet, you know, and doesn't see the reality because a lot of times we get stuck in our thoughts. We can mistakenly, a lot of times, read more into the meaning of the words than they were meant. In other words, if you were coming home to see the boyfriend and you said, oh, I'm sorry I was late, I ran into my ex, and we started talking a little bit. Well, maybe that's all that happened. You talked to them for 3 minutes and you came home. But those words will elicit a picture in the other person's mind that might not be reality at all. We get stuck on the words and not what is real. Our language is just not descriptive of us enough to truly paint an accurate picture. So when we become over-reliant on language and thoughts, we begin missing the very thing that we're describing. Now, unfortunately, in this video, I couldn't show you the Planet Earth video. It showed a monkey jumping around, that monkey, and he looked a little bit like a rabbit at times running around. And the idea, if I say monkey, you'll all have a picture in your head of what a monkey is, but it's not always what is reality. The word monkey limits our ability to truly see what that is, that life form. We say it's monkey, and mind says, oh, it's going to look like a monkey. But in reality, the words limit things. A great example I can give is this guy. His name is Stephen Wiltshire. He is autistic. He's been declared autistic. That's a word we use to describe people who have some constellation of symptoms, so to speak. But does saying he's autistic really explain anything at all? So Stephen Wiltshire, who is autistic, was put into an helicopter for the first time. They flew him over New York City, and then they landed, and they put in front of him this obvious big piece of paper and a pencil, and from memory, he drew every building in the right place with the right number of floors, the right number of windows. This is, you might be able to see, it's the point of Manhattan, where the World Trade Center used to be, and the Statue of Liberty. He can draw it from memory. We cannot do that. How can he do that? He's quote-unquote autistic. Does that really explain anything? Here are other examples of pictures he's drawn of different skylines. He's actually made a career of drawing skylines from memory because of his autism. But that doesn't really describe it. We use words and we kind of move on, and we say, oh, I understand what it is now. But we really don't. Here are other examples of some of his pictures. The one in the bottom right, you might notice, is England. So, a story. What is it you seek? Asked the master of the scholar who came to him. Life, was what the person said. The master said, if you are to live, words must die. You are lost and dejected because you dwell in a world of words. You feed on words, you are satisfied with words. A menu will not satisfy your hunger. Meaning we get stuck in our thoughts and wonder why life isn't always that fulfilling. Because the words, which is our constant ideas that fill our heads, are an impediment or a barrier for us actually to see what is. So words are useful, and the natural egoic mind is going to argue with me that labeling everything we see, going outside and saying, squirrel, tree, mailbox, subconsciously we label everything. That's how we organize life, and it has value. But what Zen tries to say is, and this is sort of the deep part, if we rely on all of these words and labels to have a preconceived mind of saying, oh, I know what that is, that's a tree. It's an actually lazy, very undisciplined way to take in the world. If you were really mind-focused on what's going on and not focusing on all of the commentary in your mind, you would actually see the world for what it is. Those who are awake all live in the same world. Those who are asleep live in their own worlds. Early in the year, I asked, how many of you kind of sleepwalk through life, do the same thing over and over and over? And almost every hand goes up. It's the nature of the experience of life, of having a routine and doing the same thing. And what happens is, because it's a been there, done that mindset, we get stuck in not paying attention because we already know what's happening, quote unquote, and we get stuck in our thoughts. We become asleep. Most people are out of touch with reality because they confuse the world as it is with the world as they think about it and talk about it and on one hand, there is the real world, and on the other, there is a system of symbols about the real world, which we have in our mind. The disadvantage of all these symbols is that we confuse them with reality, just as we confuse money with actual wealth. In other words, if you have a lot of money, it doesn't mean that you're actually wealthy in the true sense. Wealthy doesn't necessarily just mean money. It could be wealthy in terms of happiness, fulfillment, and a lot of times we chase one thing thinking that it leads to our happiness. The idea of words is we get so stuck thinking that we know that we miss the answer. We miss life. Second concept is the unconditioned mind that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So there was a story, two monks were outside and they were arguing about the flags. One of them said, the wind blows. That's what's moving the flags. And the other monk said, no, it's the flag that's moving. It's not the wind. And the master walked by and said, no, it's both of your minds that are moving. Now what does that mean? The flag is blowing or the wind is blowing, whatever it is, there is no why, it just is. But we, in terms of what the master said, their minds were moving. Their minds were constantly thinking. Sometimes thinking has value. Sometimes, it's a tool that we use to build our lives. But a lot of times that tool, we'll call it a hammer of our mind, begins to hammer us. It moves unnecessarily. When I talk about meditation with kids and I say, just sit in a still room, there's nothing happening. Stop thinking. And we talk about meditation. Kids can't stop thinking because their mind is always moving. So what Zen tries to do, it tries to get you back to the original mind state that sees life through unconditioned mind. Conditioning means everything you've learned up until now. When you go into society, if you have an unconditioned mind or you try to revert back to it, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you don't know what a refrigerator does. It just means that you see the world what it is without adding your own flavorings to it. So what the conditioned mind does is it's full of all of our opinions and our beliefs about everything. The been there, done that attitude keeps us asleep because I know what this is. I know what this is. And as a result, we end up stuck in our minds rather than the world. One of the times that the been there, done that mindset leaves is when you're doing something new. So hypothetically, graduation day, first day of college, first day of the military, you're awake, you're focused on the moment. You're out of the preconditioned mindset that you've had because this is new. Well, it's new all of the time. We kind of obscure reality because we're stuck on the words in our mind. Enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things. Most people are looking forward to a time when they're going to be happy and they're going to do this, that, and the other, and then one day they'll be happy, not realizing it's the path, it's the journey, it's the day-to-day accumulation of experiences that is going to make our life worth living. So if you start using words and naming things, you stop really seeing them for what they are. They begin to lose their meaning. And this is really hard to explain. Zen tries to get you just to appreciate the truth of whatever's right in front of you without all of your mental additions. So the quote on the left I like a lot. There are only two kinds of people, those who believe that they are victim of the world and those who understand that they are the world. We are part of life. We are part of humanity. But somehow we separate ourselves from the rest of humanity and we have to fight against the rest of humanity and we become kind of alienated. And that's something that the mind is doing. Life doesn't do that necessarily. Zen tries to get you to wake up and realize that you're not who you imagine yourself to be. Those are just stories. Those are just words in your mind. They're not real. So here's a story, a Zen proverb. Most kids don't get it, but we'll go through it. Before one studies Zen, mountains are mountains and waters are waters. After I first glimpse into the truth of Zen, mountains are no longer mountains and waters are no longer waters. But after enlightenment, mountains are once against mountains and waters are once against waters. And kids go, what? Well, in the beginning, we'll break it down 3 paragraphs at a time. The first paragraph, before you study Zen, you know what a mountain is, you know what water is, you've been told, you know. When you begin, second paragraph, to have a glimpse of Zen, you begin to look at what we've labeled as mountain or water. We begin to look at it without its label and really appreciate it for what it is. Every mountain's a little bit different. Water has different forms, the lakes, rivers, oceans, etc., etc. We stop labeling it and we see it for what it is. And then after eventually we see it for what it is, we can go back to labeling it just for ease. But it means we're really awake to what is, not what we think life is. You must unlearn what you have learned. The Yoda quote, the video won't really play. First part of Eastern philosophy, I talked about the teacup being full. Until you empty your teacup, you really can't understand. We have learned, our society is based on analyzation, and according to Zen, there is no why a lot of times. The overanalyzation is why we cause ourselves so much inner conflict. You have to unlearn a lot of the things you've learned. The intellectual man who is proud of his intelligence is like the condemned man who is proud of his large cell. Most people try to get as smart, quote unquote, as they can, and the more you know, the more you are saying that you know the right answer, and the more you ultimately close yourself off. Ultimately, maybe intelligence isn't just who knows the most stuff, quote unquote. Maybe things like emotional intelligence and the ability to cope also should be factored in. I would rather have a mind opened by wonder than one closed by belief. The idea of the Zen mindset is your mind is full and there's no other options, no other answers coming in. And they try to get you to empty the mind, to open your mind, to have wonder again, not that been there, done that mindset that makes life so repetitive and boring. Knowledge is learning something every day. Wisdom is letting go of something every day. Now, this sounds basic on one level, but it's really deep. In knowledge, we're always trying to accumulate. We're trying to get more and more. That's what our society has taught us. More and more is better. But wisdom is knowing what's okay to let go. So I'll give you an example in a deep sense. We have in our minds a certain way of looking at the world, and it's through the egoic mind, the I, me mind, all of our anxieties and worries. If you can look beyond that and get more of a worldly perspective and let go of the nonsense that's basically tinting our view of the world, we actually would have more wisdom. It's knowing when you can let go of something that's actually in your way, like regret or guilt, things like that. Letting go of those things is where wisdom comes from. And those things are only held in our mind. I put the slide up before. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Of seeing the world differently because you become a different person. Because you now are paying attention to what is in front of you, not what you think it is in your mind. The idea that the first day you go back to your old kindergarten building, the building's going to look so big because when you were little, you had your eyes wide open. And now you're a little more jaded and you've seen the world, quote unquote, and now the building seems smaller. The building hasn't shrunk, your perspective has changed. So this is Suzuki Roshi. He is the man responsible for bringing Zen to America and California. You see in the bottom left a Zen garden. In Zen, they're pretty basic, and they do things like raking the Zen garden, and the idea is that's all they have to do. It's kind of like making a sandcastle. It's the process of making it in the moment. It's almost a spiritual thing. It's not to achieve a goal. It's the journey of putting their entire focus into what they're doing in that moment. Most people, or while they're washing the dishes, they're thinking of something else. Zen tries to get you to open your mind and put entire focus into your action in that moment. Some quotes from Suzuki Roshi. When you try to stop your thinking, it means you're bothered by it. It appears as if something comes from outside of your mind, but actually it's only the waves of your mind, and if you are not bothered by the waves, gradually they become calmer and calmer. Meaning random thoughts are always going to pop into your head the rest of your life, but the word thinking is a verb, and we engage in thinking. If a thought pops in your head and it really bothers you, that means you've got a lot of inner turbulence in terms of that idea. They talk about the waves of your mind. If you stop focusing on whatever it is, that wave, it gradually calms down. But people do the opposite. They overthink and make the wave into a tsunami. Nothing comes from outside of your mind. You yourself make the waves in your mind. If you leave your mind as it is, it will become calm. Well, people will say, no, I think so much because of stuff that happens, and then I can't help it. Zen tries to get you to poke the big boy pants and realize that you ultimately can realize that the way you're thinking is manifesting your own reality. Leave your front door and your back door open to thoughts. Allow your thoughts to come and go, just don't serve them tea. Now, what does that mean? If you say to yourself, I want to stop thinking about her, it's driving me insane. Whatever you resist, persists, meaning you can't stop that thought if it bothers you. But if you can learn to focus on what is, empty your mind of all of that stuff, eventually the wave calms down. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. But, I know I'm like that type of person. If I have like some sort of cut in my arm with a scab, I keep wanting to see if it heals. And as a result, it doesn't heal as quick as it should. We do that with thoughts. We think the same repetitive thoughts for 17 years and wonder why we have anxiety. If ultimately we refocus, maybe some of it goes away. The true purpose of Zen is to see things as they are, to observe things as they are, and to let everything go as it goes. That's an important thing. Let everything go as it goes. Don't fight against it so much. Zen practice is to open up a small mind that knows that someone's to blame, the small mind that knows that I know the answer. So, let's brainstorm a list of all of the things that you would call inconsiderate. And then kids will give me a whole list of people who, cut in front of you in line, or don't hold the door open, or, chewing with their mouth open, blah, 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 whatever it is. The whole list of things that are inconsiderate. Kids have long lists of these. And then I put this statement up to show that what the next slide is going to be is a painful truth. The painful truth is there is no such thing in the world as inconsiderate outside of you and your judging mind. The person who's quote-unquote inconsiderate is just doing them. You don't like it, so you're judging and you're saying that's rude. But is it rude? Kids will argue, yes, it is rude. But it's just a thought that you have in your mind. You can't control the whole world. You can learn to control yourself. A quote I do a lot is Sankara said, the whole world has lots of sharp rocks. Meaning in people who are rude, bad life situations, the whole world has sharp rocks. Either cover the whole world in leather, which is not possible, or wear leather on your feet in terms of sandals. You can't change the world, but you can change yourself. Inconsiderate is only because you think that's wrong. There is what really happened, that's reality, and then there are your thoughts about it. Only one of those things is real. We get stuck on the second about all of the stuff that happened, and then we have to go complain to someone else. What happened is real. We can either work with it, or we can fight against it with our thoughts. If someone's behavior is really bothering you, it's you that need to change. That's the whole idea of Sankara. Kids hate this idea, but it's true, unfortunately. Oh, there's the picture of the story I just told. So, Zen is the pathless path. What does this mean? So the spiritual quest means in terms of not just your body, but trying to get your mind straight and realize who you really are. A lot of times people feel that they are heading somewhere. They're moving in a direction. In actuality, what the idea of Zen is returning to the view of the world before it got contaminated by all of the things we've been taught. The unconditioned mind. Meaning if you, every morning at the breakfast table, grandma or dad was bitching and complaining about stuff, that daily breakfast has contaminated the way you look at the world. If you can get your mind empty again and see it for what it is, life becomes a little bit different beyond just words. There is no path. The journey isn't about acquiring something from outside. It's from shedding layers of yourself like an onion, realizing that what you've been searching for has been within you the whole time. And so the idea of it's not an easy process to sort of learn this stuff and to think about how you and how you've been thinking have actually sabotaged yourself. But it really is almost an awakening when you realize on a day-to-day you can change your outlook by focusing on what is and not on just the words and the thoughts. Like an egg breaking, what is hatched is a new person, realizing that the truth is found on the inside. So, the idea of enlightenment, which Zen calls satori, you can't get it from external sources. A lot of people want to know, how do you get all peaceful? But it simply is inside of you, and you have to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and even though you might be asleep mentally, realize that you can change how you observe life. Existence is not a problem that can be solved by the head. It's not a riddle to be figured out. It's a poem to be sung. It's a dance to be danced. Existence is a mystery with no solution because it's not a problem in the first place. It cannot be solved. It has to be lived. Kids love to argue with me about all the problems they have to face, but a problem is made of the mind. Now, I understand there are some things that are problems. People dying, divorce, the COVID, etc., etc. But we have to work with those things. They're only problems because we can't accept them in what they are. We can't ultimately fix everything in the universe. In fact, we can't fix most of it. We can learn to fix ourselves so we can handle any wave of life that might hit us.